Hey guys, Vass here from Aussie Playground and welcome to another episode of RC Pit Stop. Today we are going to be working on the Hyper MTe once again, but the idea of today is actually going to be to brace this chassis. Now the original chassis, as you guys may know, for those of you who don't know, this is what happened to the original chassis after I ran the truck and had a couple of nasty falls. But thankfully OFNA actually came to the party and supplied all the parts to fix up the truck, which was great. But now I actually want to brace this chassis because I've had a couple of runs with the truck already, just in my own time, and you can see I've kind of scratched up the brand new chassis already going over the footpath. But what I want to do is I actually want to brace it just to prevent that bending from happening again. So this is the idea that I have, and I don't know how this is going to work because obviously I haven't done it yet. But I found this 3mm piece of aluminium, which I cut to size. I kind of precision cut it so that it's the exact width of the chassis. And the idea is to slide this guy inside, so it's actually going to sit kind of somewhere here. I may need to trim the length of it a little bit, but we'll work on that. And it's going to sit inside, but I have to cut around here because there are these screws, these bolts for these braces up here, and up the front you have like the screws for the steering rack. So I have to cut this plate around it, and it's going to jam right inside. And then I'm probably going to bolt it from the top, just where I got a little bit of space here on the actual chassis, and secure it in place that way. Underneath this, I've got these two L-shaped little aluminium pieces, and I'm going to put one on this side like so and one on this side like so, that's going to be bolted on using the existing screw holes that are on the chassis, which aren't being used for anything else at the moment. And of course this will actually slide over the top, everything will jam in there, and hopefully I won't have that bent chassis again. So that's the idea with that. I do have an additional piece which I'm still not 100% sure if I'm going to use, and that's this guy here. And the idea with this guy is to wedge it in between the battery box here that also houses a steering servo and the chassis. But of course I have to cut around where the steering servo is, which I think is going to weaken this whole plate, and I don't know if that's really going to be necessary. I think once I brace it down the bottom here, especially with this big piece wedged right in between, it's really going to make it very difficult for the chassis to have any sort of bend. So I think it'll be okay just as is, and I don't think I really need to use this, but it is here in case I decide to go ahead with it. So I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to get to work. I got to pull this entire truck apart once again because I need to get underneath the chassis. The way that I'm going to be cutting out this aluminium, I'm actually going to sort of create these cardboard jigs that I'm going to work out, you know, how much I need to cut, and then of course I'll trim this aluminium piece accordingly. So we'll go from there and see if everything works. So I'll come back soon with a bit of an update of where I'm up to. Alright, so this is where I'm up to at the moment. I've taken out pretty much the whole top of the truck off. I've only left the front and rear diffs in place. I've already got my templates cut out, so these will slide in here, and now all I need to do is basically trace this out onto the aluminium plate that I'm going to be putting in its place. I will need to remove one of these to be able to put the plate in on the chassis, purely because I won't be able to fit it because, yeah, things will just be in the way. So I need to take the rear off, which I think will be a lot easier than trying to remove this aluminium brace that it has here, and all the steering rack and everything that's at the front. I think the rear will be a little bit easier. So I'll slide this off after I've done my cutouts on this aluminium plate. Hopefully everything will work out okay. I will come back in just a few seconds, thanks to the magic of editing, and show you how this is all turned out. Alright guys, very quickly I'll just show you here the first part of this sort of trimming and cutting out that I've done. You can see I've sort of cut it out, slides in there all nice and neat. You can see that the size that I've done it at is pretty precise. There's very little movement here on this aluminium plate, so it should be a very nice snug fit. It should stop the chassis from buckling this way. This is what it's going to look like underneath once it's all bolted on. Then I'm going to grab these brackets, I'm going to bolt them on here like so. And what I did before I removed the little center transmission case is I actually marked out, hopefully you guys can see, there's a little sort of black texture mark there, so I know that these little guys can't go past that point, so that they don't interfere with anything. And I also did the same thing at the rear here. So as I'm doing my cutouts on the aluminium, I know that I'm not going to be hitting any of the plastic pieces that I've got there. So just a little tip there if you're going to be doing anything like this. All right, so let's move on to the next part, and then I'll come back and show you how we're going. All right, so I've got my plate all cut up and ready to go into the truck. You can see that I've also drilled out all the holes of where everything's got to go. I've already dummy fitted everything into the chassis, so I know everything's going to fit just fine. It's just a matter of assembling the truck and putting everything back together. These brackets here, I had to cut out a little bit just here to allow for some nuts that are going to go on the inside of that brace, and I'll show you how that's going to work. If I flip this guy over just quickly, you can see that I've drilled out 4 new screws. Well, actually that one there is an existing one, and I decided to do the same on the opposite end. So those will actually hold this brace to the chassis plate itself. These L brackets will go here, which will hold to the side of the chassis, giving it a little bit more strength, and also hold to the aluminium plate that I'm putting on the bottom. And that's really all there is to it. One thing to remember is once everything is mounted, I'm no longer going to have access to my steering servo from underneath, but it's not really an issue because this box is only, which houses your steering servo, is only held in place by about 4 screws. Once you remove that, you have access to the servo there. Not really a big deal. So now it's just a matter of assembling everything and getting it all back together. A couple of things you guys should know is obviously you're going to need some hardware. One of the things that I did a while back is I bought one of these little boxes off eBay that came with a bunch of different size screws. Really cool, handy thing to have. I think I paid about $18 with delivery, and it's been really useful. Sometimes you lose a screw here and there, and I just go to this little box and I usually find what I need. Another one to have, which is this one here from RC Screws, which was for a Stampede or a Rustler, I'm not sure. I bought this a while ago when I was doing that project uses. Never really ended up using it, but I've been pitching screws from here for quite a while, and it's come in really handy to do little things like this, or when something does go missing, you know, you've got some backup screws to keep your RCs together. So enough yapping, let's put this together and I'll come back with the finished product. Alright, so once again my Hyper MTe has been pulled apart and put back together. I will show you very quickly how it all looks underneath so you guys can have a bit of a closer look at it. So just a quick recap, you have an aluminium 3mm piece going all the way from the front of the truck to the rear. It's bolted on with 4 screws that you can see here. These screws are actually got a nut on the inside to hold them in place. It's all been Loctite into place as well. So this will hopefully stop the chassis from flexing in this direction, which was the issue that I had with it originally. You've got these 2 L-shaped aluminium pieces that are bolted to this aluminium plate as well as to the chassis itself. This should hopefully give it a little bit of added strength, and yeah, once again, having these plates bolted here should prevent this weak point here from buckling. It should give it some really good strength. I think this will actually work quite well, at least in theory anyway. Let's see what happens when I actually do put it through its paces. Putting the truck back together was a little bit of a nightmare because you don't have access underneath the chassis anymore, so it does become a little bit tricky in how you put things back together, in what order they go in. I started from the front and worked my way from the back, but if I was to do this again, I would start from the back and work my way to the front. The reason being is because this rear kind of diff casing here has this plastic brace that bolts on to the existing chassis, and there's a couple of nuts that you need to put on that these screws go onto, these black ones here. So having the chassis in this plate in its way, I can't get my fingers in there to hold that little nut in place. So I had to do a little bit of magic to get that bolt to go into place, because to be quite honest, I wasn't going to pull the entire truck apart again just to put 2 screws in. I had to find a way to do it. I did manage to do it. They were on there, very tricky to do, but if you're going to do anything like this, definitely start from the rear, work your way up to the front. I think you'll find it to be a much easier job. I didn't go ahead and put that aluminium plate in here. This was the original idea was to wedge it in between this receiver box and the chassis and kind of bolt it in there, cut around the steering servo. But I kind of realized that by cutting out the section for the steering servo, I was going to weaken the plate, and it wasn't really going to serve a huge purpose, going through all that trouble of drilling the holes and getting longer hardware to fit it in. So I've kind of left this out. What I did find though, something that I overlooked earlier, is that you might be able to see there's an unused hole on this side of the receiver box and another unused hole on that side there. And for some reason at the front here, there's a clearance of about 3 or 4 millimeters. And I'm thinking of cutting up a small strip out of this 3 millimeter plate that I used here and actually sort of sliding it in there so that it goes across and stops the chassis from flexing inwards should it ever cop a nasty hit. So there's one hole on either side. I think I may have enough room here to drill another hole and just put a couple of nuts, a couple of bolts here, a couple of screws, whatever, and just hold the whole thing in place and give it a little bit more strength. But I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I'm going to leave it as it is and just see how it runs. Hopefully this will be enough to prevent the chassis from buckling like this the way it did originally. So I'm curious to know, do you guys like this idea? Do you think I've done enough to brace the chassis? Do you think I should have done more? Do you think I've done too much? So I'm curious to know what your feedback is of this little sort of homemade mod. This is something that I'm learning along with all of you. I don't know if this is going to work. I think in theory, this is going to give it some very much needed added strength. I know that it's added a little bit of weight to the truck, but I don't see it being an issue because the electronics are quite strong. They're very powerful, and you know, it's going to be, the truck's going to be able to handle the extra weight without any problem at all. And it's really not that heavy considering it's a 1/8 scale monster truck. If I was doing these sort of mods on a 1/10 scale, yeah, you know, that could play a bit of a part, but on a 1/8 scale like this, capable of running 6S, the only issue I may have is just a weight bias when it's flying through the air. But as far as performance and speed, I don't think it's going to play a big part in it. So that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit the like button. Don't forget to check the video description for more links to previous videos on the truck, as well as a link to my Facebook page, which should keep you a couple of steps ahead of what goes on here on YouTube. Thank you again for watching, and I will speak to you guys next time.